مسار المركب.
2, 1, unrealized.
Assalamualaikum everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Scope here on British Muslim TV with me, your host, Waqar Rizvi. Today we're going to be discussing the G20 Summit in Indonesia. You do see these numbers at the bottom of your screen. Please make sure to send in any comments or questions that you may have throughout the show or even after the show regarding the show and our expert. Well, this seems to be a time for Indonesia to really make its mark on the world, as it will also, in 2023, chair the ASEAN organization. Now, the geopolitical issues overshadowing this G20 summit, such as Russia, Ukraine, and the ensuing energy crisis, cannot, of course, be overstated. Indonesia's rising role in the Indo-Pacific region and globally through seeking to possibly mediate even between Russia, Ukraine, and the West, as well as its outreach to other global players, is certainly very significant. But at the same time, international groupings such as the G groups have long been seen as exclusionary economic alliances where the world's elite gather, discuss, but rarely actually resolve truly global challenges. My expert for today's show will be Mohd Agoes Aufiya, who is an Indonesian international affairs scholar and researcher. Mohd, assalamualaikum, and thank you very much for taking your time out to join us today here on British Muslim TV. I'd like to start off, Mohd, by asking you about the significance of Indonesia hosting the G20 summit. Of course, also in context with the fact that it will also be it'll be heading the ASEAN soon as well. Is this a time for Indonesia to be rising as a power both regionally and globally?
Yes, this is very good opportunity for Indonesia to be host of the G20, as we know that the G20 represent for 80% for the GDP of the global GDP and 75% for the global export and 60% for the global population. And Indonesia, in this presidency of G20, we have the theme of recover together and recover stronger. And in this leadership of Indonesia in the G20, we have three sectors of the priorities. The first is the strengthening the architecture of the global health, which we know that because of the pandemic, which hit very strongly toward the system of the health globally. And the second priorities is the digital transformation, which especially focus into two things. The first is the digital skill, and the second one is the digital literacy. And the third priorities within Indonesia presidency in the G20 is the transition in terms of the energy, which we try to find the new energy and the renewable one for the world energy. And the spirit which the Indonesia carry on in this presidency of G20 is the inclusivity. So Indonesia hopes that will leave no one behind in the G20, which will include everybody. I mean, every countries, including Russia and also the China, into the G20 to contribute for the global betterment. And we also considering that every developing countries and also small island countries and any others which might be impacted because of the global dynamic today, we hope that the G20 can contribute to these small and also developing countries. So it's like Asia, Africa, Latin America, and also the island countries in the South Pacific, in the Caribbean itself. And as we know that the President Jokowi today already delivered the opening speech in the G20 that the world is facing extraordinary challenges, which the COVID-19 pandemic, it's not over. Rivalities still continues and the war occurs, and we also
Okay.
have the impact that the
So
crisis of the
if I
food,
can
energy,
come
and
in,
also
Mohammed,
financial security will
because
continue.
you've mentioned a lot of the sectors which are important, of course, to Indonesia, and I do want to talk about those in detail. But the overall attempt by Indonesia to, as you say, keep this summit inclusive and to remain neutral on issues like Russia, Ukraine, for example, and on other issues as well. Do you think that that will succeed? I mean, is it really possible for Indonesia to remain separate from the pressure that is being placed on Indonesia by the United States or by other countries at this summit? In some ways, do you think Indonesia will bow to some of that pressure?
Yes. Even before the G20 summit today, as you know that internationally that the President Jokowi already visited the two countries which is on the conflict, the Ukraine in the 29th of June, yeah. And the next day, in the 30th of the June 2022, the President Jokowi also visited the Russia, which that's mean that the two parties accept Indonesia stance, which we can also say that Indonesia still hold non-alignment position, which as part of Indonesia basic foreign policy as a free and active foreign policy, which means that Indonesia will not dictated by any countries, including the United States, which may be in favor to the Ukraine, which Indonesia accept very openly by the Vladimir Putin as the president of the Russia when the President Jokowi visit to the Russia itself, which this means that Indonesia can be the mediator, which stand in the middle between the crisis or the conflict itself. This is, I think, very good opportunity for Indonesia to deliver the peace that must go on, and the war should be end.
You know, Mohammed, some people would say, those who are critical of Indonesia, they would say that it is kind of naive to expect that you can separate the economic challenges of the world from the political challenges of the world, right? So many people are saying that Indonesia wants to separate these two things, and because Joko Widodo, he said that this G20 is not supposed to be a political forum, but at the same time, it's not possible to separate the economy and politics, is it?
That's true. That in the speech of the President Jokowi really emphasized in the economic terms because of the conflict between the Russia and also the Ukraine. We know that the price of the fertilizer it's increased because of the block from the Russia to the Ukraine, yeah, and also the basic food like grains, yeah, it stopped because of the war itself. So that's why President Jokowi encouraged that the fertilizer availability and also the affordability in terms of the price should be there, and the current price of the high food price it's worsened because of the crisis and no food supply, scarcity and fertilizer, which can lead to the failure of many parts of the world, especially for 48 developing countries which affect because of this war. So the President Jokowi strictly say that end the war, so we have to recover together, especially in terms of the energy and also the basic food grain, yeah, which every country extremely affect because of this. So the G20 hopefully will give the result or outcome which can contribute to the peace and also to the increasing of the economy of the world.
All right. So, you know, as I said earlier, Mohammed, many people are saying that this is the time for Indonesia to rise, to become more global in its influence and effect. What is Indonesia's foreign policy aim through these sorts of summits, right? So it's hosting G20 right now. As I mentioned, ASEAN next year as well. That's also extremely important within the region. Does Indonesia have the kind of economy and influence to really influence the world positively?
Yeah, Indonesia has a very good speech to deliver that the country has no interest except to become the honest broker to solve the problem of the world, especially the conflict between the two countries, Ukraine and also the Russia. So Indonesia, with the free active foreign policy, expect that to become the mediator for the two countries, and also as the alternative to the alternative between the Russia bloc and also the United States bloc. So that's a very important stance which Indonesia try to play in the G20 itself. So the message is very clear that the war must end, and the peace will make the growth of the economy in the world will be prosper. So that's the important thing which President Jokowi try to deliver the message in the G20 itself. I think we just also got the mandate to become the chair of the ASEAN in 2023, and it's also part of Indonesia how to play a greater role in the world peace and also in the global growth in terms of the economy itself.
We have to go to a break soon, Mohammed, but before the break, I wanted to ask you, Indonesia is the largest Muslim population, right, within a country in the world as well. How does that, do you think, impact how important this summit is, how important Indonesia's global role is?
Yeah, it's very interesting question. Indonesia, with the population around 270 millions, and majority are the Muslim, almost for 80%. And we try to show to the world that we also have minorities like Christian, Buddhist, and also the Hinduism. They can live in the peacefully in the country, and we accept one another with the highly tolerance with another major religion. That's we try to have the message that unity in diversity, which is very important for Indonesia as the tool to improve our political security and also our religious tolerance.
All right, Mohammed, we have to go into a break, but of course, I'm going to ask you to stay with us. We'll be back right after this break with Mohd Agoes Aufiya, an Indonesian researcher and scholar who is joining us there live as well. We'll continue to discuss the G20 summit, which is being held in Indonesia, but of course, many of the geopolitical as well as very real world challenges, both for Indonesia and the world that exist at this point in time. We've spoken about Russia, Ukraine already, as well as the energy crisis, which I want to expand on right after this break with Mohammed. Stay tuned.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Free Legal Advice Show on British Muslim TV. People are finding it very difficult to go abroad to get married. It is possible to make an application for a fiancé visa. We do have quite a lot of people in the UK, and this issue of nationality is arising quite frequently.
Almost 150,000 Canadians a year will use a homeless shelter. These people need food, clothing, and access to basic hygiene. Fatima Zahra Helping Hand is a non-profit organization with the goal of helping the underprivileged in Canada. Along with our active support for recent immigrants and refugees, one of our ongoing initiatives is to feed and clothe the homeless. For more than a decade, we have provided hundreds of thousands of hot meals to some of the most vulnerable and needy. We continue these efforts with several monthly initiatives. For more information or to donate, please visit our website, nurmuhammad.com.
And we are live.
Welcome back, everyone. You're still here in Scope with me, Waqar Rizvi, here on British Muslim TV, and we'll continue to discuss the G20 Summit in Indonesia with our Indonesian researcher and expert, Mohd Agoes Aufiya, who is joining us live right now from Indonesia. Mohammed, I wanted to ask you in this half, you mentioned energy security and the energy crisis. That is, of course, very important because of what's happening between Russia and Ukraine. What is Indonesia's stance on that? How much of an impact has this energy crisis had for Indonesia itself?
Yes, we already faced that the increase of the price of the energy itself in Indonesia, which before the price can be said that it's affordable to the people of Indonesia. Now it's increased. It's for almost 2 times from the previous price. So we already got the impact of the energy itself. So the President Jokowi urged that in this G20 that the impact of the Ukraine and also the Russia war, it's really make other countries highly level in security, and also they face with the various serious condition, which we have to solve the problem, especially in this opportunity in the G20. In fact, that the Russia president or the Vladimir Putin did not attend the meeting, but Russia sent its representative to the external minister of the Russia itself, and we hope that this problem can be discussed and also can be coordinated between the G20 member, especially with the Russia and also the Ukraine. Yeah, in fact, the President Zelensky attend in the online meeting in the G20 itself. So Indonesia, it's also hit by the increase of the energy itself. So we try to find also the new kinds of the energy and also the renewable one. So Indonesia also have some solution with the use of the electrical vehicle, and also we also have the palm oil, which can be used as part of the diesel energy for the car or the truck. So it's one of the another way, the solution from Indonesia, how to find the new one and the renewable energy, despite the another crisis which is currently hit by the global affair.
Another issue, as you mentioned, out of the 3 issues, Mohammed, is food security. And of course, we know that because of the Russia-Ukraine war, that food security has become a big issue globally as well. We have wheat exports, which had stopped for a while, but I believe President Widodo was involved somehow in trying to mediate a deal, and that was successfully then signed with Turkey's involvement as well for wheat exports to happen. Tell us more about the view of Indonesia on food security, the kind of impact that this has had on food security for Indonesians.
Yeah, Indonesia even currently hit a little bit by the inflation itself, but it's still manageable. It's the increased price in terms of the basic food we found, in the market itself. So that's why the President Jokowi also mentioned, especially for today's remark, that especially the fertilizer, the availability and the affordability should be there, because the price day by day it's increased because of the crisis itself. It's make the food supply, the scarcity of the fertilizer, which lead to the crop failure in many parts of the world. As I mentioned, that at least 48 developing countries highly lever in the food insecurity, and also they face with the serious food security condition, which we need, as the President Jokowi said, that we need to adhere to the world order, especially to the international law. The currently world to be tested how they responsible in respecting the international law and the principle of the United Nations Charter consistently. And Indonesia believe that the responsibility means should be in the win-win solution despite zero-sum situation. So in this opportunity in the G20, the win-win solution should be there, even for either for the Russia or either for the Ukraine side itself. So the President Jokowi tried to mediate with the win-win solution as part of the part of the epicentrum of the growth of the global economy itself. So this is very important thing which become the underlying issue which to convey by the President Jokowi itself in the opening remarks in the G20.
Okay, I want to move away from just the issue of Russia, Ukraine, Mohammed, and I wanted to talk about the pandemic and coronavirus as well. You mentioned that also as one of the three key issues which President Jokowi is concerned with at this G20 summit and the recovery from the pandemic, because as you correctly said, it is still continuing in some fashion. What was Indonesia's experience with the pandemic? What kind of an economic as well as health impact did it have in Indonesia? A lot of people would say that many of the developed countries or the Western countries were not as cooperative with developing countries, especially when it came to vaccinations and other such distribution.
Yes, that's true. Indonesia feel that within the pandemic, especially the COVID-19, we have to collaborate with each other. And Indonesia tried to balance between the economics and also the health issue in Indonesia. So we have some kind like we can say that intermediate lockdown, not like a totally lockdown in our countries, because we still consider the economics it's part of the recovery during the pandemic itself. And the issue of the vaccination, it's also very important. We try to collaborate with many other countries for distribution or the availability of the vaccination itself from the Western country to developing countries like India. India is one of the part Indonesia key major partner in providing the vaccination itself of the COVID-19. And luckily, just around 1 month before, Indonesia successfully produced the COVID-19 vaccine, and also we try to contribute to the global or to other countries for handling the pandemic itself by sending some tools, vaccination, and also mask, and also the uniforms for the handling the COVID-19 in many other countries, including to China, South Korea, and also many others developing countries. So Indonesia tried to encourage that all countries must work together. The vaccine availability must be equal to many other countries, not in favor or not to become the domination of the Western countries, which has a better infrastructure or better financial itself. So Indonesia tried to become the alternative of the equality of the vaccination itself. So that's why in this G20 issue, that's we have to improve our response and also the capacity for better handling in the health issue, especially for the next or even the current pandemics, which still not over.
Talk to me also, if you can, Mohammed, about Indonesia's view on China, right? There's a lot of criticism, as you know, on the part of the United States and other Western countries about China's economic practices as well as, of course, political issues within China, such as China's repression of Uyghur Muslims as well. What is Indonesia's view on China?
Yes, Indonesia is one of the partner or the bilateral countries with the China, especially Indonesia also joined with the Belt and Road Initiative. So Indonesia always open with the pre and active foreign policy with China. But Indonesia also will try to remind regarding the issue of the Xinjiang or in the Uyghur Muslim in China itself. So Indonesia always open to remind that China must be considered that the human right should be ensured, and also the practice of the religion should be there in the China itself, because it's part of the human right and also the right for the practice in the religious affair.
And what about then China's economic practices? Because a lot of people would say China is somewhat of a bully.
Yes, as we know that Indonesia and China has one of the key project in the BRI or Belt and Road Initiative, as we call that, the fast train from Jakarta to Bandung, which is currently ongoing. Many criticism it's received by the government of Indonesia because of the upper price of the train itself. But the government still with China government ongoing on the process to complete or to finish the project itself. And beside of that, also some investment from China in Indonesia also positively impact to the economy of Indonesia itself. But Indonesia, as I mentioned, with the pre and active foreign policy, will not dictate in terms of the political and security affair. So Indonesia will collaborate with many other countries to diversify the cooperation, not only with China in terms of the economic, but also in terms of the politics and the
Thank
security.
Thank you very much, Mohammed. We'll have to leave that as our final answer. We really appreciate you taking your time out today to speak to us live here on British Muslim TV. That was Mohd Agoes Aufiya, who is an Indonesian researcher and scholar, speaking to us live there from Indonesia itself, speaking there about the G20 summit in Indonesia, as well as the many geopolitical challenges that exist around that summit and others. Viewers, thank you very much for watching this episode of The Scope. Please do join us next week, as well as we'll be discussing another hot topic.
Explore the lush green valleys, thick forests, snow-capped peaks, mesmerizing waterfalls, and calm lakes. Meet nature in the wild, with avenues for adventure and sporting. Witness the ancient living culture and participate in their festivals. Taste the indigenous cuisines with a touch of traditional hospitality. Observe archaeological sites illustrating history. Learn about the ancient relics and artifacts on display in museums. Unveil Asia's best-kept secret. Visit Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, Pakistan.